Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents Not Seeking Mr. Right by Natasha Moore, narrated by Rebecca Estrella. Chapter 1. It was a really nice ass. Firm, totally bare, sticking out the back door of a dented yellow Mini Cooper parked in the far corner of the Lakeside Country Club lot. Ginny Colburn wandered over to get a better look. The long legs were muscular, with just the right amount of hair. The gravel in this back section of the parking lot had to be hurting his feet. Of course, the gravel wasn't kind to her high heels either. Her cousin Beck had gotten married earlier in the day, and she was supposed to be inside with the rest of their family and friends, helping him and his new wife Rachel celebrate. A rash of curses erupted from inside the car. She snuck closer. A pair of black shoes flew out the door and shot by her. She gasped and ducked. The guy must have heard her. He started to pull out, hit his head on the doorframe, and cursed again. Then he emerged from the car, straightened, and turned to face her, holding a pair of black trousers in front of him. Otherwise, he was completely naked. Holy hell, he was gorgeous. The first thing Ginny noticed was the mop of brown curls shot with gold that framed a strong, handsome, young face. His eyes were kind of a light green, and at the moment were wide with obvious horror at being caught nude. He clutched his trousers in front of him, but he couldn't hide the smooth ridges of his pecs and abs. His body was tanned, except from waist to mid-thigh. If they lived on one of the coasts, she'd picture him surfing the wild ocean waves. Ginny wanted to keep admiring that gorgeous body, but she suddenly realized that if the situation had been reversed, the person catching her nude would damn well better have the decency to turn away, if not to leave altogether. "Sorry." She whipped around and faced the long white building where her family and friends had already gathered. She cleared her throat. "Anything I can help you with?" He let out a huff of a laugh. "Don't have me arrested for indecent exposure?" "No problem. Everything I saw was way more than decent." Did she really say that out loud? She heard rustling behind her and muted cursing. "Can't find my boxers," he grumbled, low enough he might have thought he was talking only to himself. "Have to go commando." And that gave her a mouth-watering image she wouldn't forget any time soon. "Running late," he tossed over his shoulder. "I'm supposed to be in there serving drinks." Why was she standing here? She should leave him to it and head into the reception. But she wasn't ready to go in there. Not yet. The guy cleared his throat. "You can turn around." Ginny didn't want to appear too eager as she whirled around. His black pants were fastened, and he was shrugging on a white shirt. She swallowed as she watched those long male fingers work the buttons. Easy, girl. He's just a kid. He started searching the floor of his little car. Fuck. Where are my shoes? I'll get them. Ginny noticed where they had landed in the grass after they'd whizzed by her head. She bent over to retrieve them, and when she turned around, one in each hand, she couldn't help but notice his appreciative smile. Had he been checking out her ass? She grinned as their eyes met, and sparks flew. Fair's fair. Damn, he was cute. And she needed the ego boost. Especially today. "Great, dress," he said when she handed him the shoes. "Thanks." It was the perfect wedding guest dress. Fancy, but not too sexy. Comfy, but not dumpy. Not too long, but didn't rise up too far when she sat. And lastly, it was a beautiful deep violet, because Sam said he loved her in purple. But that didn't mean a fucking thing now, because last week Sam Hernandez broke up with her. He was the reason she was avoiding the reception. They were supposed to attend this thing together. Now she had to walk in there alone. The guy slipped his shoes on and closed the door on the chaos left in the back seat of the car. See you inside? It's my cousin's wedding. If I don't show up, I'll hear about it. For the rest of her life. There was that huff of a laugh again. Me too. He took a step away, then turned back, like maybe he didn't want to walk away from her yet. Is Beckett your cousin? Or is it Rachel? Beck. I'm Ginny Colburn. He had a breathtaking smile. Josh Anderson. Beck's my boss at the salvage station. She'd have to stop over to the station more often. You're a bartender? Oh, yeah. You said you'd be serving drinks. And that's what I'm supposed to be doing right now. Gotta go. Wait a minute. She stepped closer, got a whiff of fresh air, mowed grass, and musky man. Your tie's crooked. She reached out before she thought about it, then froze before she actually touched him. May I? The corners of his full lips lifted. Sure. Can't let you go in there looking like you got dressed in a parking lot. He winked at her, and her stomach tickled. He wasn't much taller than she was in her heels, so it was no reach to straighten the thin black tie. It put them face to face, closer than perfect strangers should be. The lashes framing his eyes were longer and lusher than should have been legal. It took her forever with an eyelash curler and mascara to achieve something close. His tanned skin was smooth, with none of the wrinkles Ginny was beginning to see in the mirror. She adjusted the tie and smoothed it down over his white shirt, then rested her hand on his warm chest for an instant before she came to her senses and yanked it away. She shot her gaze back to his face, and her eyes locked with his. A shock of something intense passed between them. It was ridiculous, but she couldn't deny the invisible sparks that flew between them again. Ginny cleared her throat and stepped away. There. He grinned, and man, that did stuff to her insides. Am I presentable now? Ginny made a show of looking him over. He was way more than presentable. She had to curl her fingers into her palms before she gave in to the urge to run her fingers through his sun-kissed curls. She'd already touched him more than she should have. But wait, what was in his hair? Have you been rolling around in the grass? Damn! He ran his hands through his hair and shook out the bits of green grass she'd noticed. Better? Ginny realized it probably wasn't another job that had made him late for work. More like a cute young thing. Yeah. She nodded toward the clubhouse. You better get in there. He started to leave, then turned back to her. Aren't you coming? In a minute. See you later. Josh threw her another one of his wide grins and strode away. The mid-August sun beat down on her. She couldn't hide from Sam forever. How could she have wasted 2 years on that guy? Yeah, their relationship had always been on again, off again. But they'd been together more often lately. Hadn't they? Or had that been wishful thinking on her part? Hoping that soon she'd have the family of her own she dreamed of, a husband and children before it was too late. Maybe it was time to let go of that dream. Ginny entered the building and headed to the reception hall. The bride's love of color was apparent all around the large room. No simple white tablecloths and dainty fairy lights for the famous interior designer. The tables were covered in deep burgundy cloths. Thick silver pillar candles flickered everywhere. The only white she could see at the moment were the lilies tucked among a variety of colorful flowers that mirrored the bridal bouquet. The banquet hall was full of people, most seated, some milling around. She didn't see Sam, and she refused to let herself look for him. She wasn't surprised to find she was seated at a table of other women who didn't have a +1. Rachel must have scrambled last minute to change her seat so there wouldn't be an empty chair next to Ginny, a blatant reminder to her and everyone else that her date had dumped her for his ex-wife. "There you are." Lucy Park's spiky burgundy hair was easy to spot. "I was afraid you went home." "Of course not." Ginny dropped into the chair next to Lucy and glanced around the room. She was surprised to realize that, instead of looking for Sam, she was trying to find Josh. The three Wilson sisters, all former school teachers in their 70s and 80s who had never married, took up half of the table for 6. The final woman at their table was one Ginny hadn't seen much of lately. "Melanie Hayes, where have you been?" The three of them, Lucy, Melanie, and Ginny, had started a wine club, more as an excuse to get together than to taste the various wines. Melanie had missed the last few get-togethers. Her friend tossed back the perfectly styled red gold hair that bounced around her shoulders. "Crazy busy? More like Ava is crazy busy. If I'm not working, I'm carting her to dance class or gymnastics or a friend's house. I can't wait until she gets her driver's license." "Surely she's not old enough to drive," Miss Mary said, her pale blue eyes wide. "2 more years. Half of me is terrified at the thought, but the other half is really looking forward to it." She sighed. "So much." "Ginny, I was outraged when I saw that picture online," Miss Letty told her, in a robust tone that didn't sound as though she was in her 80s. "We all felt so bad for you. That man should be ashamed of himself." "What picture?" Stupid question, but maybe there was more than one. "Why, the one of Sam Hernandez and his ex-wife kissing at the castle on the hill, of course," Miss Letty said with a sniff. "When everyone knows you were expecting him to marry you." "I don't know about that." Her face burned, though, because she had had expectations for her relationship with Sam. Wouldn't any woman dating for as long as they had? He didn't even call to break up with her until the photo got posted for everyone to see. She grabbed her water glass and took a big gulp, then looked around to locate the bar. "After all the times you've posted to the Lakeside Village Facebook page, you've finally become the subject of the gossip mill yourself," Letty continued, amusement in her voice. "Oh, yeah. Wasn't that great?" "Are you sure they're really back together?" Miss Flo was hard of hearing and always spoke at the top of her lungs. "He might remember what a mistake he made with Tracy the first time around and come crawling back to you." "I wouldn't take him back anyway." Ginny pushed away the embarrassment she felt as she remembered the way she'd poured her heart out before Sam shut her down. The condescending way he'd reacted to her begging. Had she actually begged? Ugh. Turns out he'd been seeing her for a while. Too chicken to tell me. Melanie lifted her water glass in a toast. "You're better off without him." The other ladies murmured in agreement. "And now you get to sit with the rest of us spinsters," Miss Mary said. Spinster? Ginny was a spinster? She was 40 years old and never married. Would she end up like the Wilson sisters? No husband, no children, no family. A spinster. Alone. She didn't even have a sister to spend time with. Beth had died with their parents in a car crash when Ginny was in her teens. God bless Aunt Donna and Uncle Chuck for taking her in. Yeah, they were her family, but she'd always have a hole in her life where her own little family should have been. How about we retire the term spinster and say single lady? Ginny asked. I like the sound of that, Miss Mary said. Lucy frowned. That still labels us by our marital status. Melanie shrugged. Single lady? Sounds like something to be proud of. Miss Mary rattled her teacup when she slammed it down on the saucer. I've been a single lady my entire life. We don't need a man to be happy, Miss Flo agreed loudly. None of my boyfriends ever left me happy in the end, Ginny admitted. Certainly not Sam Hernandez. We don't need a man to feel complete, that's for sure, Melanie added. I was married to Dan for 14 years. He never completed me. Damn right, Miss Flo announced at the top of her lungs. I've had it with men, Ginny decided. All the energy she'd put into her relationships, nurturing them. And where was she now? Second-guessing every moment of her time with Sam and the other guys over the years. I'm tired of looking for that special guy, she went on. I don't think he's out there. And you know what? I'm okay with it. How long had she been putting off being happy while she waited for a man to do it for her? We're single ladies and proud of it. Her shoulders felt lighter at the loss of all that stress. She was over it. We don't need men, Miss Mary agreed. But Ginny saw her gazing longingly at the bridal couple. The only thing we need them for is to have a baby. The words were out of Ginny's mouth before she could stop them. Not really. Lucy gave her a side eye. Just pick a man you'll never see again and have a one-night stand, Miss Mary told her. Everyone at the table stared at her in disbelief. What's the matter? That's how it was done in my day. Women didn't do that back in our day, Miss Letty said with a frown. Some did, Miss Mary said. They told everyone their husbands died in the war. Miss Mary, you're surprising us today, Ginny said. I've been on this earth for 78 years. Just because I'm single doesn't mean I don't know what goes on in the world. Guess we shouldn't underestimate the single ladies, Lucy said. Someone called Ginny's name, and she turned in her seat. I love that dress. Her friend Katie came up from behind her, then broke out into a wide grin as Carter approached, carrying their almost one-year-old daughter, Ivy. Ginny's chest felt heavy as she drank in the sight of the sweet little girl with Katie's blonde curls and Carter's dark eyes. Ivy reached out for her mother, and Carter passed her over. The little girl patted her mother's cheeks and placed an open-mouthed kiss on her lips. The ladies at the table sighed, and tears prickled Ginny's eyes. Would she ever have the chance for a child of her own? The whole biological clock thing had never worried her before. She'd always figured she had plenty of time. But now here she was, 40 years old, and her clock had to be winding down. How long before it stopped altogether? Ginny swallowed. She had to get over her baby envy. She's adorable. Gotta get over to the head table. Carter leaned over to drop a kiss on Katie's cheek. Mom's waiting for you at the family table. He nodded at Ginny and the others. Ladies? family table. Never had Ginny felt less like family than she did right now at this Colburn wedding. Waitstaff started circulating with glasses of champagne. Ginny dropped back into her chair. Time to push all these envious feelings away. Today wasn't about her. It was about Rachel and Beckett. She could be happy for them, like she could be happy for Katie and Carter without feeling sorry for herself. Or at least she wouldn't wallow in the envy. "Champagne, ladies?" Ginny glanced up at the smooth, familiar voice. Josh approached their table, carrying a tray of tall champagne flutes. She couldn't help but remember he wasn't wearing any underwear beneath those snug black trousers. The thought made her warm, and made her smile. "Hi there." Ginny surprised herself at the flirty tone in her voice. "You're a real lifesaver." He winked at her, making her tingle. Then he glanced around the table, taking them all in. "I'm always glad to be of service, ladies." Ginny not quite accidentally brushed her arm against his as she helped pass the champagne around the table. She could do with some harmless flirting right about now. This was exactly what we needed. "Thanks." "He looks like exactly what you need, Ginny." Miss Mary had a twinkle in her eyes. Could she read Ginny's mind? Miss Letty gasped. "Mary!" Then she burst into laughter. "She's right, you know, Ginny. You need someone to take your mind off that cheating bastard. He'd be just the young man to do it." Eyes widened around the table, and Ginny's face heated. But she couldn't help glancing at Josh. He winked again, and she reminded herself that she wasn't looking for the right man to make her happy. But that didn't mean she couldn't use a sexy man to give herself a little happiness. Josh's chest did something funny when he heard Ginny Colburn laugh. Like all the Colburns, she had a down-to-earth quality that appealed to him, but she still seemed to get along with all the self-important Bradford guests at the reception. For a crazy moment, he wished he could drop into a chair beside her and get to know her better. Yeah, that was totally crazy. He wasn't a guest here. He was the hired help. He couldn't stop himself from glancing at Ginny again. She caught his gaze, and the corner of her pretty mouth lifted. Josh felt a surge of emotion he hadn't felt since forever. It was wild. She shook her head slightly, and he could tell she was trying not to roll her eyes at what the older women had said. Time to get back to work before he forgot why he was there. "Enjoy the champagne, ladies." Then he wove through the fancily dressed crowd. His sister had gotten married a couple of years ago, and her reception had been held in the back room at some bar and grill in Buffalo. The crowd had been a fraction of what was here, but damn, they'd had more fun than these people appeared to have, and at the end of the day, Kendra was happily married to Austin, and they were doing their best to grow their family. 5 years younger than he was, and she had one little boy already, and another kid on the way. He headed for the portable bar tucked in a niche against the far wall. Marco could smile and pour, but anything more complicated than beer and wine, and he was lost. He'd already sent Josh a couple of looks of desperation. "We need to circulate more champagne," the caterer Irene Maxwell announced. She stepped in front of Josh, blocking his way to the bar. "Hey, you, cute kid, grab a tray and get back out there." Cute kid? He'd worked these jobs all summer with Irene, but she'd never made an attempt to learn the names of the people working under her. Another check in the never work for this person again column. I'm supposed to be at the bar. Marco needs help. I'll tell you where you're supposed to be, Irene answered through gritted teeth. Get out there with more champagne. With any luck, he wouldn't have to take any more of these shit jobs. If he got a response from even one of the resumes he'd sent out, he could get hired soon in his chosen field. Then he'd only need one job to make enough money to pay his bills. He wouldn't be waitstaff or bartender or gardener or tutor. He'd be a landscape architect, earning a living himself doing something he loved, chipping away at all that student debt. All the time and money he'd spent getting his degree would be worth it. But for now, he grabbed a tray. At least he could see more of Ginny. He mentally shook his head. Maybe he'd been thinking about her too much since he'd been foolish enough to get changed in his car before his second job of the day. But why not, if it helped him get through this crap job today? Her blue eyes sparkled, and the faint lines around her mouth told him she laughed a lot. She was probably only a few years older than him. When she'd straightened his tie, he'd been able to sample her sweet scent, and her golden hair looked so soft he'd wanted to touch it. He couldn't stop thinking about her, couldn't forget about the sparks that seemed to zap between them when they'd been alone for those few minutes, or stop fantasizing about the curvy body beneath that purple dress. Soon, Josh was too busy serving dinners to fantasize about Ginny Colburn, but finally he was able to get behind the bar with Marco. They'd worked together before at these gigs, so they fell into an easy rhythm. When there was a lull in the drink orders, Josh looked out and saw Ginny on the dance floor, shaking it with two women she'd been sitting with. She was laughing, tossing those golden curls, and throwing her arms in the air. He couldn't drag his gaze away as he watched her move her shapely hips in an uninhibited way that made his trousers tighten. "What do you know about Ginny Colburn?" The question was out of his mouth before he knew it. Why couldn't he stop thinking about her? She was but one of 300 guests at this overpriced party. Marco frowned. "She's way too old, bro." "Not that old. She looks like she'd be fun. She used to date Sam Hernandez, the vet that took care of my dog. Remember?" Josh nodded. "I guess they broke up." Marco nodded to a guy with salt and pepper hair dancing close to a tall, slender brunette. "That one's his ex-wife." Marco shrugged. "The women in my family were talking about them. They've been divorced for years, I guess. No one knows what they're doing back with each other." "So Jin got dumped?" "I guess." Josh had to be nuts to feel happy that she was single, and that he wished he could be out there dancing close to her. And hell, that he'd already given her a nickname just hours after meeting her. Marco narrowed his eyes. "What are you thinking?" He was thinking that she was laughing a little too loud, that maybe she was trying to prove she didn't give a shit that her ex was dancing with his ex, that maybe she could do with a little boost. With perfect timing for once, Irene stopped by the bar. "We're done here. Clean up and you're free to go." When Josh peeked out from the kitchen a little while later, he zeroed in on Ginny standing at the edge of the dance floor. She stood alone, smiling as she watched other people slow dancing, probably all friends and family of hers. Then her smile dropped when a man approached her. It was that Sam, the guy Marco had pointed out, the idiot who dumped her. She backed a step away, then frowned. She obviously didn't want to talk to him. He grabbed her wrist, and Jin yanked away.
"Sample complete. Ready to continue?